Despite his numerous fanfics, Sylvester Stallone never fought in Vietnam. His playground was the idealized American fantasy of driving out the communists, whatever that means. Reagan's America was the antithesis of nuance, and the media of the time gave the people what they wanted. As opposed to today's zombie hordes and endless World War II repetitions, video games like Konami's Contra recounted the myth of exceptionalism. The lone hero in battle doing what the collective horde of government and armed forces could not. Except that in video games, particularly those made in Japan, added an important twist to this mythos. You, the inexorable force of nature, were not alone. Like Contra, Sega's Line of Fire featured guns for 2 players, not 1. Collectivism snuck into the discourse, and Americans seemed not to notice its repudiation of the lone lawman saving the day. Riding Fight is a 1992 arcade title from Taito, a beat-em-up which also allows 2 players to both ride and fight simultaneously. While it's unclear from my one-player-only footage, taken because I lacked a second controller for my PC, both Burn Bowie and Keith Jagger can hoverboard through futuristic cityscapes in gorgeous natural settings, taking on regular mooks and the spongiest of bosses. The game is desperate to pull you out of your workaday life with its one neat gimmick, a Mode 7 floor that can speed you in one of 3 cardinal directions, left, straight, or right. That's it. The combat is mushy, you don't have enough time to avoid every collidable object coming at you, and the aesthetic is such a blur of pixels and poorly scaled sprites that it lacks the clarity of its slower brethren. I particularly like the Sakura-laden battle with Shizuki, as she teleports around, releasing energy spheres, and then clones. This battle has the most care taken of any boss fight, clearly comfortable within the developer's wheelhouse, and I sort of wish they had dropped the whole Neo-Tokyo crossed with Rambo bits in favor of this direction. But I'm not here to do a full analysis of Riding Fight, if one was possible. What you see is what you get in this game, especially with a Middle Eastern oil refinery level where you fight Colonel Abdullah at the end. Instead, I think about how well this game presents a window into the modern era, from a time when attracting ADHD brains to pump quarters into a large box was the goal. As we doom-scroll in our Robert Evans-consumed minds, assured that things will not return to normal, to the halcyon days of 2019, this is life for us, rocketing down an endless conveyor belt, shifting directions but never taking us where we want to go. Black Lives Matter, although the continued reticence of American citizens to apply punitive measures to the police or even to abolish them shows that ultimately black lives don't matter enough to enact change. The protests of 2020 are now seen as an aberration, dropped quickly in what it seemed that no one had the political will to take their demands to the next level. Steven Soderbergh is even working on a film called Kimi, in which an agoraphobe braves the streets of Seattle packed with demonstrators to reach something or other. This clear metaphor for liberals terrified of disruption in their lives is rather sad, considering the bulk of Soderbergh's past work, and well, he can go fuck himself for it. We are all Riding Fight. We are all hurtling down the corridors of history, fighting the enemies of the past, leaping at our few precious chances for pleasure, eating hot dogs and chips, fighting the dragons or single-celled abominations while being denied the glorious transhuman experiences we'll need to survive the future. As we compartmentalize our identities for our work life, friend life, social life, and sometimes activist life, we find ourselves spread over Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Signal, and so forth, having to maintain connections in such a way that would frustrate every CIA OPSEC from the 1980s. This protects us from saying that Black trans lives matter in one social sphere and then having to have a talk with our boss about it the next day. Even though we'd like to have that honesty in every sphere of our lives, corporations and many small businesses like appearing as a monolithic entity, with all mentions of political dissent hidden away from the stockholders, thank you very much. Folks from the 1980s used to laugh at the Soviet Union for this sort of thing, and now we have the uniquely modern problem of posting something to the wrong account. We feel like Casey Jones, riding that train, high on cocaine, taking paranoia in their coffee each morning, looking for some time off to stop without having to fight a boss. Movies from the 1980s were slow, but not the games, where the kids were, where the future was. We are multifaceted creatures by necessity, facing a multitude of directions like Janus, instincts warning us of the next climate disaster we need to live through, and then the next. Riding Fight mercifully ends with a princess rescue followed by a wedding, because content is hard, and you need to rush a project out the door eventually. But it doesn't stop there. The hardware needs to be manufactured, and the marketing materials need to be prepared for the trade publications. In a recent study, the US Social Security Trust Fund reserves are predicted to be depleted by 2033, with no plans to fix this most generous concession to labor from the early 20th century. Yet life must continue, with less resources. Unlike the richest of the world, we do not see an end to existence while the oceans rise and the rates of houselessness increase. Dawn comes, as must food, and work, and art, whether by capitalism or mutual aid. The ride never stops. The fight continues.